gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Pete.
Thank you. I think I've got the mic. All right, well, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm really delighted to be here. And it really is a wonderful occasion to talk about Wikipedia because we are celebrating that 15th anniversary. The official 15th birthday was the 16th of January. And we celebrated that actually around the world. So actually, before I get to that, I just want to point out here, if you're following along on your laptop, I've got a couple of links here. So I'll just pause on this slide for a moment. If you want to pull up these slides, they'll have various links that I'm talking about throughout the talk. But anyway, and I will have these again at the end of the talk in case you miss it. So I just have a few photos to start out with. This here is a cake that they had at their birthday party in Tehran, which I believe was the first Wikipedia birthday celebration as the day kind of rolled around the globe. It's something that when we have like events in the Wikipedia world, it's fun to see people talking about what they're doing in local places, typically starting off in somewhere like Malaysia or in this case Iran, and then it kind of rolls around the globe as the day goes on. In Rio de Janeiro, they celebrated by writing some Wikipedia articles together. And in San Francisco, we had a panel discussion and we talked about social justice and journalism and how Wikipedia relates and both disrupts and also augments various institutions throughout society. And we also had some fun. We do have fun once in a while as well. So what I really want to talk to you about today, it really starts with the vision statement, which is, it's based on a quote from Jimmy Wales from the early days. It's slightly refined from that. Imagine a world in which every single human being can freely share in the sum of all knowledge. That's our commitment. So when you take a statement like that, and I think especially in the modern age with the internet, there are a lot of concerns about what happens with knowledge, right? Over here I see a DuckDuckGo t-shirt. The other day I'm new to Raleigh. I was walking around and I found myself walking past the Red Hat offices. So I think open source, privacy, there are a lot of questions on people's mind as the internet rapidly evolves about, is information going to be shared in a way that's equitable, in a way that's fair, in a way that all of society benefits from technology rather than just the privileged few. So I think when you take a statement like this and you just maybe hit a sweet spot in history, which I think there is a bit of luck involved in Wikipedia, you get a lot of people excited about it. So this is actually a photo from Wikimania 2012, which was in DC. So that was, at the time, I think it was the biggest of the annual conferences that we've had, although I think there have even been bigger ones since then. But actually, this is only a tiny fraction of the people who edit Wikipedia around the world. In any given month, there are 100,000 people who make at least 5 edits to a Wikipedia article in, I think it's 270 languages. And that's, in itself, is significant because most of the major websites, Twitter, Facebook, et cetera, they have about 70 languages. So Wikipedia also brings knowledge a lot closer to people in the sense that they can actually read something and contribute to something in their own language. So, this 15-year anniversary is a significant one for me. It's also my 10-year anniversary of editing Wikipedia. But also, as I think back, and just to kind of elaborate a little bit on what Ken was saying initially, if you think back to 2001, I don't know how many of you were paying attention to the internet in 2001, but I'm just going to list a few websites that hadn't started yet. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, none of them had begun yet. Google existed, but it was just a search engine. There wasn't Gmail, there weren't all the services that Google offers. And if you've ever heard of a website called MySpace, that hadn't started yet. And even Friendster, which was before MySpace, had not started when Wikipedia began. So 15 years is actually a pretty impressive amount of time in an internet time frame. So, as much as I'm tempted, I'm not going to lead you in a round of happy birthday. I'm sure we all love sing-alongs, but I'll skip that. I'll spare you that. But I do want to talk about a little bit about the general history of Wikipedia that has both been caused by and also contributed to the kind of excitement that you've seen, I think, in these photos. And I want to bring it around to something that you as young engineers entering into your careers might find applicable. And that's kind of an interesting point for me, because when I think about Wikipedia, honestly, I'm always a little bit baffled when people see it as a technical project. Because to me, Wikipedia is it's fundamentally, and if you go back to that vision statement, technology isn't mentioned anywhere in there. It's just imagining that the world is a place where information can be shared freely. So, and this concept even has its roots in the Oxford English Dictionary, which has been around for hundreds of years, but was also produced by a massive collaborative process. When the Oxford English Dictionary was originally created, their method was that they had people literally write down and mail in slips of paper defining words as they knew them and understood them. It was supposed to be a dictionary that represented how language was actually spoken, not the way it was supposed to be. So, even the idea of having large-scale collaboration is not new with Wikipedia. And so, what I think is the kind of the magic about Wikipedia is that the technology came to a certain point at this time in history that allowed people to do something that's much broader than just technology. It's technology enabling social behavior. So that's kind of my perspective on Wikipedia. But there certainly are aspects of it that are really interesting, I think, from an engineering perspective. So I'll be coming to those as well. So in 2009, 2010, the Wikimedia Foundation, which is the nonprofit that stewards Wikipedia and several related projects, launched a huge strategic planning process. At the time, the budget of the foundation was about $10 to $15 million annually. They spent $1 million over that year engaging 1,000 people to produce a document to determine what the next 5 years should look like. And this diagram is one of the main things that came out of that. So the idea is that there's a technical platform that supports what's known as a virtuous cycle. You've probably heard of a vicious circle, so the opposite of that is a virtuous circle. If you're ever applying for grants, this is the kind of thing they like to see, is like, how is everything contributing to stuff getting better? A theory of change is another name for something like this. So the idea is you've got a technical platform that influences all of these pieces, and the more participation you get, the more that drives up quality, so the quality gets better, and so more people want to read it, so it reaches more people in the world, which then feeds back into some of those people start participating and start contributing to Wikipedia. So I think at the time when this process came out, lots of online discussions, lots of in-person discussions, and you started to see some consensus emerge about what are the important things for the future of Wikipedia. When this diagram kind of came about, people were excited about it. I was excited about it. But the more I've thought about it recently, and in light of some of the things that have happened in the last few years, it struck me about a year ago that this diagram really could apply to any major website, right? Any of the top websites, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, even Amazon, even eBay, is based on a technical platform. They need participation or they wouldn't exist. They need people to actually be doing stuff with it, not just reading what's there. That's kind of how the web works now. It wasn't originally, right? But they need to have people participating. That is going to improve the quality. If it's a marketplace like eBay, the more stuff there is for sale, the more people there are buying, the better it is for everyone. And the more that drives the reach, the more you sort of own that market. So the more I reflected on this, it's not capturing what's unique about Wikipedia. And so I really started to think about what could be different that would do a better job of that. And this is what I came back to. This is my great graphic design skills here. If anyone wants to hire me, I've got business cards. I brought in our Wikipedians again, and so if you put community at the center, it's really just as accurate. I think technology is, of course, a huge part of it, but I think you can imagine technology exists throughout this entire diagram. Right? At every piece of it, there is a technical aspect to what's going on. But really the thing that's unique about Wikipedia is those tens of thousands of people that are writing articles, they're writing software, they're editing each other's articles, challenging the citations that someone is bringing, going through peer review processes, they're electing administrators. They're even forming organizations like the Wikimedia Foundation and the various chapter organizations in different countries. More and more, there are thematic organizations like Wiki Project Medicine, like the Wiki Education Foundation that focus on specific ways of improving parts of Wikipedia content or reaching certain communities like doctors or med school students. So I think this is maybe a better image if we want to just sort of think about what's unique and special about Wikipedia. And I'm going to just take a moment here. So I went through some of these a moment ago, but just to kind of recap and give you an idea of what all of that social activity is that produces this huge encyclopedia. The way that an article develops, and if you do look on the slides, you'll see links to support some of these things. So the life of an article, an article will typically start off as just a couple of sentences, maybe one or two references, and then gradually over time, a number of different people will contribute to it, and it'll grow and it'll shrink. And there's some cool visualizations. If you look on YouTube, you'll find people have done like time lapses of articles. But so that's what I think of as sort of the core collaborative activity of Wikipedia. But then, you can generalize a little bit on that. There are peer review processes within it where if you really do a lot of work on an article, you can submit it and get basically a stamp of approval that it's one of the best articles on Wikipedia. There's also writing and refining the policies that govern Wikipedia, right? There are disagreements all the time on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is about everything. So of course there are disagreements. You get, Palestine, global warming. Is it global warming or is it climate change? Abortion, like the most controversial topics there are in society, those are all going to be on Wikipedia. So, those are the obvious ones. But then Wikipedia generates its own sort of strange and esoteric disagreements that are, sometimes amusing, sometimes really important, but you never would have thought of it. So writing the policies that help a really diverse group of people figure out how to work together is another important kind of collaboration. Detecting plagiarism, right? When someone comes and logs into the site for the first time and what they paste in something that's clearly off a website or from a published work, it's important to be able to catch that and delete it. Electing administrators to enforce all of these kinds of things. There's on English Wikipedia and some of the other bigger language editions of Wikipedia, there's an arbitration committee. So when people really can't work out their differences, there's actually an elected body of volunteers to work through that. And then on the more technical side, there are bots that do all kinds of things on Wikipedia. There's actually some really good research out there. The research I'm aware of is by Stu Geiger, who's done a couple of papers about the increasingly important role that automated scripts play in generating Wikipedia content, or fixing vandalism, reverting vandalism, fixing typos. But one of the most famous examples, actually, Rambot. This was in 2004. There's a huge spike in the size of English Wikipedia because someone created a script that automatically created an article about every single census-designated place, every town, city, village in the United States, and machine wrote an article based on that census data. And then there are gadgets, which are ways that if you know just a little bit of JavaScript, you can write things into the preferences of Wikipedia. You can make it, you can build tools that people can turn on and off in their preferences that help them browse more easily or edit more easily, things like that. And then finally, partnering with institutions. So I already mentioned the Wiki Education Foundation and the Wikimedia Foundation's Wikipedia education program. So they work with universities. I've actually got some materials up here, if you're interested, that cover some of this work, which basically supports professors. Is there anyone here who's had to work on Wikipedia or had to do something in depth with Wikipedia as part of their course? Yeah? Maybe in the Q&A you can tell me a little bit about that. I'd be interested to hear what you guys are doing here. But the theory there is that Wikipedia can be a really useful teaching tool. So if you're participating on Wikipedia, you can learn things from that you might not be able to learn in a traditional classroom setting. GLAM is a popular acronym in the Wikipedia world. It stands for Galleries, Libraries, Archives, Museums. So these are all institutions that we see as very strongly aligned with what Wikipedia is trying to do. And so there are lots of people who like to work with say, a museum and help them improve the articles about their holdings or about the artists represented within their holdings. And put together events where curators are coming together with local Wikipedia volunteers and each teaching each other something. The more organized versions of that are known as a Wikipedian in residence, which did start with museums, but now there are actually universities and nonprofit organizations that have Wikipedians in residence as well. And finally, the work that I do in my consulting business, I work with companies that a typical project will be that they want to improve their own article, but increasingly, I work with companies that actually want to work on something that's general to their industry, so that they're actually improving the understanding of the space that they operate in. And so in the work that I do, I only work with companies that are willing to be completely upfront about their connection to the company and be very collaborative in their in getting feedback on their suggested edits and things like that. But they still need a lot of help learning kind of the ins and outs, both socially and technically, of how to contribute to Wikipedia. So, okay, we're doing all right on time. So here's a diagram I put together to indicate something. I think this indicates some of the important social dynamics in the Wikipedia space. So there are lots and lots of different roles as we just looked at, but these I think are particularly important ones. You have a lot of people, and this is really where I come from, who are volunteer writers and editors. They're interested in a certain topic, and so they decide to start working on Wikipedia to, either as a part of learning more about it or as a part of sharing what they already know, or a hybrid of that. And then I put volunteer engineers. Engineers is, a pretty general term, but more technical people, and that really ranges from like the things I discussed before, like coding bots and gadgets, to writing the open source software that drives Wikipedia, the MediaWiki software, which I'm sure you've probably seen on lots of other websites, right? You go to a website and it looks kind of like Wikipedia. That's because it's running the same wiki software that's produced for Wikipedia. And also just the operations, just keeping the site online and developing redundant systems that, there's caching, and I mean, it's a top 10 website, so there's a lot going on technically within Wikipedia, and there are a lot of people who volunteer in that space. And then you have the Wikimedia Foundation staff. So the Wikimedia Foundation came after, it wasn't formed until a couple years after Wikipedia. It's a nonprofit organization that's designed to help Wikipedia. It's the basic idea, as I see it, is that it's supposed to support the work of volunteers in continuing to build Wikipedia. But it's really grown a lot in the last. So I worked that when the work that I did on the education program was in 2009 and 2010. When I started there, I think there were 34 employees, and as I said before, the budget was about $10 million a year. Now it's $80 million a year, and there are over 200 employees. So all of these relationships are a little complicated, right? If you're an editor and you really wish that the software did this tiny little simple thing a little bit differently, well, if you don't have a lot of contact with the people who are writing bots and gadgets, and you don't have any idea how to do that stuff yourself, it can be challenging to even figure out, how do I suggest this idea to get it on someone's radar that they might develop a solution. So there's sort of silos in the wiki. Of course, there are certainly people who exist in the arrows, right? Who kind of cross over back and forth, but they're sort of few and far between. And then with the Wikimedia Foundation staff, look, I did these other slides. I'm not even using them. So that's what I talked about first. And so the idea of Wikipedia is that it's the encyclopedia anyone can edit. But also, and this comes from the headline of a Wired article from 2013 when there was a new, the programming language Lua was enabled on Wikipedia so that you can do a lot of stuff within Lua on that. This was the headline of their article. So something that the Wikimedia Foundation has really focused on is their relationships, especially in that time since about 2010 until now, is that relationship with the volunteer engineers. They've hired several positions where people whose job really centers around building those relationships, sponsoring editathons, getting people together, managing requests, making sure that things are prioritized so that people know what they should be working on and things like that. But this one is something that I think in recent years has become a bigger and bigger problem. This relationship is really challenging. And I think I'll probably talk about this for most of the rest of my talk, and I'll be happy to take some questions about it. But the fascinating thing about Wikipedia is if you look at it from the perspective of a volunteer that's been chipping in and has sort of been building relationships with people around the world and sees things working, sees things growing, even though there are huge problems with Wikipedia. The demographics are very skewed. It's pretty famous that there are very few women editors. That's something that most of us regard as a really big problem. The content of Wikipedia is pretty skewed. But even so, Wikipedia is continually growing, and there are continually new people coming, even if the numbers aren't rising overall anymore. There are always new people coming and learning about Wikipedia and coming up with new things to do. But if you look at it from the perspective of an organization, it maybe looks a little bit different. Right? If you're applying for grants, if you're appealing to donors every year, there might be this sense, well, we've got to come up with a big plan that's really going to substantially address these problems. We're going to fix the demographics so that it's much more true to that idea of being the encyclopedia anyone can edit. We're going to come up with ways to get the content more consistent so that the sciences are covered as well as Pokemon characters. I don't even know if Pokemon is something that college students would know about today, but that was something that when I started editing Wikipedia was sort of the go-to example of like this, sort of this fad that every single character in this world had an article, but there's plenty of really important stuff out there in the world that isn't covered on Wikipedia. So this is a cartoon that a colleague of mine, and when I say colleague, I've never had a conversation with this guy, actually. But this is the kind of relationship that you develop. You start to see common cause with people who are, I believe he's in Germany, and this is a cartoon that he drew a few years ago, or about a year and a half ago, around one of a series of big software changes that the Wikimedia Foundation was rolling out that many of us felt was really drastically interfering with the way that Wikipedians like to do their work, and there just wasn't there was lots of feedback, but not a lot of listening to the feedback. So I want to come back to this idea of Wikipedia as the encyclopedia that anyone can edit. And I put a number 7 there because if you look at all of the different software features that is needed for something like Wikipedia to work, this is actually only one of what I see as 7. And this here is this is Ward Cunningham. Ward invented wiki software. This was about 6 years before Wikipedia was started. So his idea was to create software that made it really easy for people to work together on the web. So before wikis, you had to basically write, and you had to know how to write HTML or have an expensive piece of software that would generate HTML for you, or if you were really sophisticated, do something with PHP or a scripting language. You really had to be very technical and have some very specialized skills to be able to do anything on a website. So the idea of a wiki where you could just click a button that says edit without even making an account and make a few changes to some pretty simple code was pretty radical at the time. And I think I especially like this photo of him because, you know, if you look here, it's software patterns, wiki, pair programming. You can see he's really wrestling with these ideas of how do engineers work together, what kind of software could support doing that better. So when the wiki was first invented, it really was pretty much number 7, was really the main one, was just that edit button and to be able to make a change. But these things all came along as wiki software evolved. Some of them through Wikipedia, some of them through other wikis that existed prior to Wikipedia. But if you're engaging with a wiki, you want to be able to perceive that someone's made a change to a page, right? So if I've written an article and then I go away for a month and I come back and 2 or 3 of you have added something to it, maybe deleted something that you thought was wrong, I should be able to at least perceive that there was something for me to look at there. I want to be able to see exactly what changed. What sentence did you remove? What citation did you add? What image did you add? I want to be able to see who changed it, so and what the reasons were for it, so that if I want to have a conversation about that, was this a good change, or was there something about mine that you missed, that you didn't understand what I was trying to do, and maybe we should, try to address both of our concerns, just to make it possible to have that conversation. And also, it should be easy to undo the changes of others. So that's actually one of the really important things about Wikipedia. People look at Wikipedia, how is this possible? How is it possible that you can put something up where anyone can make a change at any time, and it doesn't just devolve into complete lunacy? Well, some people would say it actually has, but this is really the key to that, is that if you vandalize Wikipedia, right? If you go in there and put in a false fact, that's going to take you a little while to think it up and type it out, and I can fix it in a click of a button. I can undo what you just did with the click of a button. So that makes it possible that as long as there are generally more people that care about Wikipedia being improved than people who want to mess it up, then they're going to sort of have the upper hand. So all of these things map onto features in the software of Wikipedia. And I'm not going to go through and give you and walk you through these features now, because that would be a little time consuming. But if you're really interested in this, this is probably something to look through after the talk. So, being able to perceive that something changed, that's the watch list, that's the view history screen on an article. To see what changed is a diff screen that'll show you left and right what's the before and after version of an article, and it's going to highlight the parts that changed. Who changed it on the diff screen, on the user page, on the user contribution screen. All those things are going to show you the username of the people who are making changes. Why they changed it, that's why there's an edit summary. Every time you click the edit button on Wikipedia, there's a little field after the main edit window for an edit summary where you can say, I fixed a typo, or I deleted a reference because it's no good, that's been debunked, or whatever it is, you can put in a sentence or so about what you said. Do people sometimes, are people sometimes a little disingenuous about that? Yes, but because you do have that ability to look at the diff screen and see for yourself, you can usually find your way around that. You want to be able to address the person? Well, it's beyond just being able to send a private email. There are public talk pages all over Wikipedia. So every user has their own talk page that's publicly visible to everyone, and every article has its own talk page as well. So when you have a conversation with someone, other people who are interested in that subject see it too, and they don't have to have a redundant conversation. Undo changes, like I just said, that's very easy to do. And of course, making changes, just the edit button itself is really the main innovation there. One of the huge software projects that the Wikimedia Foundation has been working on for the last few years is called the Visual Editor. And that was they made a really big priority out of that you shouldn't have to learn a bunch of code to write a Wikipedia article or to edit a Wikipedia article, that you should be able to edit it more like a Word document and just point and click. See things in bold instead of having like apostrophes on each end of it that are code that's going to turn it into bold and things like that. And of course that's very important, but I think something that was missed here from the perspective of an experienced editor, of someone who works on Wikipedia all the time, is if you do that, without an eye to all of these other things, then you haven't really given someone the ability to fully participate in Wikipedia, in all of the discussions and decisions on Wikipedia. Sure, they can edit a page, but if someone comes along and objects to what they did, and they don't have the slightest idea what a diff page is to be able to link to something and say, well, here's the reason why I did that, then they're sort of at a disadvantage. So, and you know, there have been other software projects that have aimed at some of the other pieces of this, but I do think one of the significant problems with the way that the foundation has gone about things is it's not a holistic theory. It's not a holistic theory of how to improve all these things in a way that they connect well with each other, and B, and this is really a big challenge with a huge collaborative project like Wikipedia, is they could come up with a very sophisticated, unified theory of how to improve all of these things with expert input. But if they don't have the buy-in, if they haven't designed that roadmap in a very public way with a lot of participation, then there's going to be a lot of suspicion around it. And often that suspicion is actually going to be justified because Wikipedia is so complex, they will have missed things, right? So there are just really big design challenges around Wikipedia. You need to be able to do really big participatory public processes, but also be able to empower people who know things about software design. And you need to be able to balance those kinds of interests. So I do want to come back to this for a moment. So I talked first about volunteer writers and editors and the challenges of interacting with volunteer engineers or technical types. The Wikimedia Foundation has certainly prioritized this kind of relationship here. And I think there are many benefits to that are really evident. I think, at least from my perspective, I don't have data to back this up, but my day-to-day experience is very much that it seems that there are more people engaged with and feeling good about their technical contributions to the project, and like they know what's going on around them. But this last one here, I think, is a real challenge and is something that is going to need a lot of work if Wikipedia is going to really thrive. I wanted to come back to this cartoon that I showed before, because this is something I think there are a lot of lessons in this cartoon. To me, this is a really compelling image. I think when I look at this image, I see a lot of people that are, they're all fairly expressionless, right? They're doing what they're doing. Each one of these people is working on the task in front of them. And we even have, here we have some coordination. Here we have some coordination too. It's not, there's not such a fundamental difference between what's going on in the sort of organized, hierarchical Wikimedia Foundation or what's going on in the more ad hoc volunteer world. And yet, you can really see the work that's being done here has a strong impact on the other side, but there's a power imbalance there. So what I've quoted on the left here, assume good faith, this is actually a Wikipedia policy. There are 5 core Wikipedia policies, and that's one of them. It's considered very important that when you're engaging with other people on Wikipedia, you're probably going to run into disagreements, and that the best way to work through them is that if you can always try to see the good in what the other person's trying to do. And I think this is something that most people look at and they think that's really naive or that's really idealistic. But I can tell you, if this is something that you really work on in yourself, in your interactions, and this is not just Wikipedia, I think this is going to apply, in college, in your jobs, in really every kind of interaction. Assuming good faith about the people around you, even if they're not doing it back to you, is going to tend to lead to a better result. And so in a lot of these interactions where the foundation has generated some software and there's been pushback from the community, I think both sides have done a poor job of assuming good faith. I think individuals on both sides or individual interactions. And so there's become a lot of sort of ingrained and entrenched bad feelings about these dynamics. But I think really the truth of it is that anyone who's working on Wikipedia does want to do something good. That vision statement of making knowledge accessible and shareable by everyone on the planet really is something that everyone in the Wikipedia space believes in and wants to be a part of on some level. And so I think as much as the problems around Wikipedia and the Wikimedia Foundation have really been coming to a head recently, I think there really is a good opportunity for all parties to kind of learn something in the process and get back to a better place. I want to give a couple of sort of general examples of this kind of thing, just to get back to that personal connection of what really got me excited about Wikipedia to begin with. When I'm thinking about this process, the first person that comes to mind, and this is an easy one, right? This is one where there was, for me, never any conflict. But there's one Wikipedia editor who, for literally a couple of years, the only things I knew about him was that he was really interested in the streams and rivers of Oregon, really all aspects of them, hydrology, the economy around them, industry, agriculture. Those were the kinds of articles that he wanted to work on. And I also knew that he was the kind of person who always seemed to show up when you were getting frustrated. He would have, if you couldn't figure out how to fill in sort of a gap in an article, he'd show up, he'd have a source that he'd found that you'd never thought to look for. If you were pushing through a peer review process, he would sort of turn into a cheerleader and just show up at the last moment when you're just getting, you were getting criticism from all sides and you're ready to throw your hands up in the air and just give you a few words that kind of help you stick with it. So, I think that kind of encounter is one of the things that to me was the most sort of addictive aspects of Wikipedia, finding people who have shared interests and are willing to find ways to do things to help you out and are appreciative when you do that back to them. And to be able to develop those kind of relationships with people that I didn't meet this guy. I've still never met him face to face. I've known him for 5 or 6 years, and I feel like in a lot of ways I have a better working relationship with him than with people that I've worked at a real job with. But then there are other situations where you really see major personal growth. So I've had several friends, and I think this is true of myself, but I think it's even clearer sometimes, when you deal with people over a long period of time, where you see people who are continually getting into arguments and sort of flailing about and saying terrible things about other people, and gradually over time they start to find ways to make things work better, and they just become happier people. They become more productive people. So I think if there's one thing that I hope you leave, having learned about Wikipedia or an idea about Wikipedia to explore, really is that within Wikipedia there's a lot of wisdom, there's a lot of accumulated knowledge about how to work together in lots of different realms, and it's kind of invisible because the product is an encyclopedia, right? The product is not a community. There isn't this idea that we want to be a great discussion site. So Wikipedians don't tend to run around, saying, "Hey, join Wikipedia. It's like Facebook, but it's more academic, or whatever it would be to entice people in." That's not what it's about. Like we will try to get people to join Wikipedia if what they want to do is write articles, if what they want to do is help collect and curate and generate knowledge. But I think as companies look to how to collaborate better, how to get technical projects done in ways that serve a really diverse set of stakeholders, I think that Wikipedia is a really valuable and rich world to look to, and there's an increasing amount of research done on what works in Wikipedia, what doesn't work in Wikipedia. So I would just stay tuned into that as you move into your careers and as you look for ways to engage online, and really any way that you can involve yourself in Wikipedia, whether you become sort of one of those obsessive editors like I was for the first year or two, where I was logging in every single day, multiple times a day, working on lots of articles, or if you just fix a typo now and then and maybe jump into an interesting discussion every few months. It's worth doing, and I think you'll learn a lot from it. So that's, how am I doing on time here? We got 15 minutes left, so yeah, I'd love to take questions or hear what any of you think about Wikipedia.
If you have a question, if you'll raise your hand, our ambassadors have microphones, and they'll bring those. We want to capture your question on video.
What drives you and the contributors at Wikipedia?
What drives me?
Yep.
I assume as a volunteer contributor. Well, the initial thing for me, I guess I'll tell you sort of historically, and then what continues to drive me. But originally, when I first got involved with Wikipedia, I had actually already worked on other wiki sites, and I had learned a bit about how to use a wiki. And what happened for me is I had come to a point where I was trying to shift my career. I was really interested in the state of Oregon, where I had lived since college, but I hadn't grown up there. I was realizing that there was a lot about local politics, local history, local culture, that I didn't know from not having grown up there. And so I was doing a lot of things in my life to learn about that. Blogging was kind of just taking off, so I was keeping up with various blogs. I was listening to talk radio. I was involved with a few different nonprofit organizations. And Wikipedia became this sort of obvious place for me to capture information as I learned it. So my first big project with Wikipedia was the 2006 election cycle, and I was really curious. So there was a big question about whether the Democratic Party was going to take over the state legislature. And so I was really interested in the primaries, like who's even running in all these races. There are like 90 races or 75 races in the state of Oregon, and I couldn't figure out who the candidates were. I'd go to the Democratic Party of Oregon's website. They had a little bit of information, not much. Republican Party, same thing. So as I was gathering this information from lots of different sources, I just started building a huge list on Wikipedia. And the thing that was really addictive to me was, and I was doing that on the theory, both it was helping me keep track of what I was learning, and also it was probably going to help someone else that had the same kind of questions. But the thing that was really addictive to me was I sort of assumed that I was probably doing something that was a little bit outside of policy. Maybe a page like that shouldn't even exist on Wikipedia, and sooner or later someone was going to come along. They were probably just going to delete it, or they were going to say, you're doing it all wrong. And I wasn't worried about that. I was kind of enjoying it anyway. But what happened instead was I started to come back, and people had added races in their own district. So it became, to me, it was like a magic notebook, right? I could keep my notes, and I could go away for a week or two, and then I'd come back, and it got better. And then when I started to realize that those were people that I could actually, if I left them a note, they would leave one back, and we could start to trade tips about what websites we'd found that were useful. Then you're actually starting to get to know people through your shared interests, and at that point, it really started to feel like a community to me. And I guess that really is still what drives it. Even 10 years later, is I want to be helping the world keep track of its information better, but I also enjoy working with other people in that process and learning even as it's like this sort of magical blend of learning and teaching, where like as you learn something, you help teach someone else, and it just goes back and forth. I think there was someone said you'd done a Wikipedia editing assignment in one of your classes. Could you maybe tell us about that a little? Microphone.
We actually had a class that was all about Wikipedia. So we'd have assignments like learning how to use Wikipedia. Like first we'd start off making like small changes and then doing bigger stuff. And at the end we had to make groups and we have to make articles and try to get them to a good article status. And so one of the ones
It's
we actually did
ambitious.
as a class was the Hunt Library one. So you can go in and look at that one. I think we did it in like 2013. So, yeah.
Which library was that?
The Hunt Library, the one down there,
campus.
the new one. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So basically you could have done this talk. What did I miss? Is there anything like major I missed here?
I think you got everything.
Okay. In the back?
All right. So as a really experienced Wikipedia user, is there some sort of feature or something that you feel like is missing or some weakness that you've identified?
Wow, that's a good question. I feel like there's an endless list. I think one of the ones that I encounter on an almost daily basis is the diff screen that I described that shows the before and after. It's like track changes, more or less. For simple edits, it's perfectly fine if someone just fixes a typo or replaces a sentence. But if someone has done like 5 things throughout an article, has like moved a paragraph from here to there, and and really made substantial changes in different places, it's very difficult to look at it and actually make sense of what you're looking at. And there are ways, like there's people have come up with innovative ideas about how to present that information better. But it hasn't made its way into the core software. Yep.
So you talked
Oh,
about this.
let's get the microphone.
You talked about the bots helping facilitate Wikipedia. Have you ever had a bot that helped vandalize Wikipedia, or that was built to vandalize Wikipedia?
It's a great question, and actually I don't want to say no, because Wikipedia is so vast. It could well be that there's some famous case out there that I just haven't encountered. But the process of how bots are deployed is really geared around making sure that they're actually doing something useful. And it's actually, I think the more common case is when if someone has an idea that someone who's maybe new to Wikipedia or new to a certain topic area thinks, oh, it would be great if we could just add, I don't know, add like the spouse of every politician to their article, but maybe it turns out the database that they're drawing from is inaccurate, and it's confusing like people with the same name that's like a politician and a football player, so like well-intentioned edits that would actually do damage. I think that's kind of more the concern that the process is designed around. And so basically, you have to be, before you can run a bot, you have to be approved. You have to, I'm not even 100% up to date on the process. But there are ways of, like, both the person can be approved to do certain kinds of things with bots at their discretion, or a specific bot can be approved. So you can't really deploy something without there being several people thinking it through and thinking through the unintended consequences. And then also, once it's deployed, it's usually done in incremental steps. So even if it's the kind of thing that you would love to have doing 100 edits a minute, you're probably going to start it off doing 50 edits, and then you're going to look at those edits, and a few people are going to make sure that it came out the way you thought it was before you increase the frequency.
Like 100,000 people per day make at least 5 changes. Is
Per
that
month.
accurate? Per month?
Yeah.
Per month. Okay, thanks.
And that is a pretty arbitrary number. There are 2 numbers that are tracked closely by the foundation, which is that one, which is known as an active editor, and very active editors is if you make 100 edits per month. And there's actually, there's some robust discussion around, like, are those the right numbers? I think there's been kind of increasing interest in the very active editor designation recently, because I think it turns out that the very active editors are kind of the glue that can hold a community together. So in a very small wiki, like an Indian language that doesn't have a whole lot of speakers, you're going to need sort of a critical mass of people who are really logging in every day and keeping up with every discussion that helps it feel like a community, so that when other people come, it doesn't feel random every time they log back in.
The website says it's like 3 changes per second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, I'm realizing I did misspeak. That the 100,000 figure is actually outdated. I think it's now, it's dropped substantially. I think it's more like 70,000. But when I say, so I do like to say that it's hundreds of thousands that have built Wikipedia, because that's, you know, cumulatively over many years, and also the people who didn't make as many as 5. So that, you know, hundreds of thousands of people have built Wikipedia, but to be more precise, it's I think about 70,000 a month that do 5 or more.
You mentioned local politics a little bit when you were touching on Oregon and your experiences there. And I've noticed that there's really a dearth of information about a lot of smaller local political races, and I wondered if you thought Wikipedia could play a particularly critical role in kind of disseminating that information when it's so hard, when maybe your only source is the local newspaper.
Right.
Or like how Wikipedia could maybe do that even a little bit better.
Well, I do think it's an area where Wikipedia can play a very useful role, and I say that I feel that it really has in Oregon. I mean, some of it is going to be, you know, the internet has just generally been, you know, more newspapers are online. There's a lot, but the Secretary of State's office has more information online. That stuff has improved over time. But I think one of the really important things about Wikipedia is that it serves as a really valuable mirror of, I don't know if mirror is the right word, but when your purpose is to capture information for the long term, you're going to tend to notice things that other people don't. So if like a newspaper runs a correction to a story but doesn't state that there was a correction, just changes it on the website, a Wikipedian might be more likely to notice that and maybe make note of it in the Wikipedia article. You know, you're going to be more aware of tools around things like that, like the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine will actually archive many, many, many websites at a certain time, so you can actually see, you know, if you think that something was in an article when you saw it 3 years ago, but now you go back and it's not there, you actually might be able to go back and see. And so there's sort of this, this growing knowledge of how to deal with the technicalities of knowledge on the internet and off the internet that sort of grows on Wikipedia. So I think local politics is a place that is a topic area that can really benefit from that. Because if it's local papers, sometimes local papers change their policies. Like they might be entirely free online for a few years, and then a new publisher comes in, and all of a sudden everything has to be monetized. So now all those old articles go behind a paywall. But if Wikipedia has been doing its job in the meantime, you might not be able to get to the source article anymore, but you can get some of the information that was there because it's in the article about that, you know, state representative or whoever it is. Yep. Microphone.
You talked about it's a site that anyone can code. Is there a similar process as with using bots for becoming a volunteer engineer? Or can you just hit edit?
To tell you the truth, it's just really, it's not my main area. So what I can do is give you some kind of general tips. And I could probably point you towards some specific people that could give you a better answer if that's something you'd like to follow up with afterwards. But I think that, you know, the basic answer is no. It's not like when you go to a Wikipedia page, you're always going to see an edit button at the top. And there is no thing that's that simple and that straightforward in the technical realm. But on the flip side of that, I think the tech folks tend to be more adept at collaborating online in certain ways. So, like, a lot of programmers are going to be logged into IRC all day. So, and Wikipedia has tons of IRC channels. So, like, if you wanted to become a Wikipedia editor and you wanted to use IRC as a way to learn about it and get to know people, you'd probably have some trouble because where there are people on editorial-oriented IRC channels, they're usually just kind of joking around. They're not necessarily, the ones who are really working on articles aren't spending their time on IRC. They're spending their time on Wikipedia. But the coders actually will. If you have a technical question and you pop it into an IRC channel, chances are sooner or later someone's going to come along and answer it. And then you can kind of start to get a sense of who to go to for questions and things like that. And there's also, there's plenty of mailing lists. These days they use Fabricator for tracking bugs. I think Trello, like there are lots of tools that, like, if you can explore those sites and get a sense for what bugs are being worked on and what features are being developed, you can probably start to find the paths towards contributing. All right.
Yeah, in the early days of Wikipedia, if you were writing an article for publication, not for Wikipedia, and you wanted to cite something that you read on Wikipedia, the answer was no, you can't cite that in a publication because anybody could put anything out there. Has that changed?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna give you both answers. I'm gonna say yes and no. Okay. On the one hand, yes. I think Wikipedia's content has generally improved. There are always going to be exceptions to that, but there's been an increasing focus on quality within Wikipedia and providing strong citations for pretty much everything that you add to an article, and more rigorous processes around that. Of course, some topic areas get more scrutiny than others, but in general, I think it has become more acceptable to cite what you see on Wikipedia. But on the other hand, I would say no, and it shouldn't be in a really serious context. And actually, I don't really think that's something unique to Wikipedia. As I was talking to Ken about this before the talk, when I went to high school, I distinctly remember a teacher saying, you no longer get to cite the encyclopedia in your papers. Right? The encyclopedia is there as sort of a guidepost. It helps you orient yourself around a topic and learn sort of where to look for good sources. But it's not something that you should be citing in your sources. So I think that's something that, in a strictly academic sense, has always been true of encyclopedias. It always will be true of Wikipedia. And I think Wikipedians will generally, I think something that a lot of people don't understand is that Wikipedians will agree with you on that. Right? Wikipedians will not generally stand there and say, no, this is reliable information, you should cite it. And I guess just as a sort of a closing comment, just back to the education program, and there are a few of these brochures if you want to look through them, or you can take them. There's not enough to go around, but if you're really interested, help yourself. But that was, when we were developing those programs, that was really one of the main things that we were looking to address, is every time there was an article in the newspaper about a university and Wikipedia, it was about professors saying, don't cite Wikipedia. And we felt that there was a better conversation to be had around the educational opportunities through engaging with Wikipedia.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Great question.